Good morning and welcome to the JMCSS podcast for the district. I'm Greg Hammond, Chief of Public Information for Jackson-Madison County Schools. Today, we've invited former West Tennessee Teacher of the Year, Bob Sparks. He's currently an English teacher at JCM Early College High. He spent some time in Nashville recently to learn more about policies impacting teachers and students in the state of Tennessee. He'll tell us about that experience and the importance of civic participation for school district employees. Plus, school board member Andre Darnell is here to recap his experience at the Student Congress on Policies in Education. Mr. Darnell served as a group leader as a group of students, a trio actually, from Liberty Technology High School, participated in SCOPE for the second year in a row. More on that in a minute, but first, a quick reminder. For the district, the JMCSS podcast is a production of the Jackson-Madison County School System in partnership with Forever Communications. You can listen to this episode on demand on Apple iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Gentlemen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you.
So thanks for being here. You all have several roles within the school system, but most importantly, you're either former district parents or current district parents. So you'll be able to provide some interesting context for us this morning. So, Mr. Sparks, your victory lap as West Tennessee Teacher of the Year is over, but I know you've grown professionally and personally through that experience. Let's start off by talking about those activities that you were introduced to because of your prior standing as a former Teacher of the Year for the school system, but then also you were Teacher of the Year at one time for the West Tennessee region. So kind of tell us how you grew in that experience.
Yeah, so it's been a really great experience. So because I was the West Tennessee Grand Division finalist, I was invited to serve on the Tennessee Department of Education's Teacher Advisory Council for 2 years, and I'll be kind of coming to the conclusion of that later this or at the end of this school year. But through that opportunity, the Advisory Council, we meet monthly virtually and a couple times in person throughout the year. And we attend State Board of Education meetings, we dialogue with legislators, we really learn about kind of the nuts and bolts of education policy at the state level. I like to call it the web of education because there's a lot of complicated twists and turns because there's all these different players.
Now, Bob, you call it a web.
Yeah.
Can I call it an ecosystem?
You could call it an ecosystem.
Right.
I think that'd be a good way to describe it as well because, and we can get into this a little later, but I think it's important to understand, a lot of the policies and rules and things that affect us as educators and affect our students, where those come from. That opportunity with TAC has just continued to kind of open other doors. I got connected with Melissa Collins. She was the Teacher of the Year for the state of Tennessee in 2022, and she's invited me to be a part of a couple of opportunities. So I'm currently doing some work with the National Network of State Teachers of the Year. And recently, as a part of that, I participated in a Day on the Hill, where I went to Nashville, had meetings with legislators from West Tennessee and Memphis area as a part of the Tennessee Alliance for Equity in Education.
So have you always been interested in education policy, or is that something that just kind of grew from being Teacher of the Year?
So several years ago, I did participate in a fellowship put on by SCORE, the State Collaborative on Reforming Education. I did that in 2017, and that was kind of my first foray into policy and just kind of learning about, again, just how all that works. So that kind of got me a little bit interested. I started following things. I signed up for the Chalkbeat newsletter, stuff like that, and just kind of began following it before. I got to meet some legislators then, but then it all kind of came back again with my win as West Tennessee Teacher of the Year.
Andre Darnell also joins us. He is a school board member. And if you're from West Tennessee or been in Jackson any time, you guys may have heard of the I Am JCM Coalition. So while Mr. Darnell is a school board member at this time, I think in my mind, you can kind of clear this up for me or let me know if I'm wrong. Your entry into public policy and politics really stemmed from your love for your alma mater, JCM.
That's correct. It was actually back in 2014 when they was actually going through the process of shutting down a lot of the schools in the area. I think they called the campaign the Vision 2020. And at that time, when I first went to the first meeting, I realized that in all of the proposals that were being presented, JCM was closed at each proposal. And a lot of the community, a lot of alumni was not really aware of that this was actually happening. So at that time, I went and started a petition and got a lot of feedback from it. There was meetings in NAACP and other organizations around. And at that time, that's when I started pulling in a lot of the alumni to start bringing them aware of what was happening. And out of that, we birthed the I Am JCM Coalition.
Your experience grew from that,
right?
And you ran for school board, and
Yes.
now you're one of the policymakers for Jackson-Madison County Schools. So I think it's a reminder, one, for people who care about their communities
Right.
to stay connected.
Yes.
Bob staying connected through his work with the Tennessee Department of Education Teacher Advisory Council, your work with the I Am JCM Coalition, and now the school board. I think the knowledge that you guys have doesn't happen if you don't get connected.
That's correct.
And so, the producer's looking at me. It's almost time for a timeout, but I'll finish the statement. It's important to stay connected. And so I want to remind anyone who's listening, in terms of the school system, visiting our website, jmcss.org. jmcss.org. On a monthly basis, our school board has meetings. And so just regularly check jmcss.org. Although we go through several news items in the span of a month on the district's website, of course, we do post the meeting dates there. So folks, particularly around the first of the month or the end of the month, to take a look at the next couple of meetings that are coming up. Before we go to commercial break, Bob, do let me know, do you find it, of course, your full-time job is educator, and of course many of your students are at JCM on your campus at Early College, but also at Jackson State.
Yes.
I know your job keeps you busy.
Yeah.
You're a father of three. Where is it difficult to keep up with what's going on? When you think about your schedule and your obligations.
It definitely can be. And I know that is a barrier, I think, for a lot of people in getting engaged in some of this stuff. It's just like, where do you find the time to do that? But I do think there are ways that I've found that I think other people can find if they want to stay up with what's going on. I mentioned, Chalkbeat newsletters. There's a lot of newsletters you can sign up for. It's just like one email in your inbox that kind of highlights the issues in education around the state. Or EdTrust has one where they send out a weekly update of important bills coming through the legislature. So there's some things like that that really help you kind of keep the pulse of what's going on, and it's kind of low commitment on time. I think social media is another place. There's a lot of information on there if you know kind of who to follow, just certain news organizations. But yeah, that's kind of where I do it.
When we come back from this commercial break, we're going to make a connection. Bob's been in Nashville with the Tennessee Department of Ed Teacher Advisory Council. So he's going to let us know about some of the policies that may be of concern for educators, employees, and parents here in the Jackson-Madison County School System. We're visiting with board member Andre Darnell and former West Tennessee Teacher of the Year Bob Sparks on For the District, the podcast for Jackson-Madison County Schools. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Jackson-Madison County Schools and Forever Communications want you to leap up for literacy. Community partners like Miss Tennessee volunteer Jada Brown are increasing literacy across the community by reading 20 minutes every day.
I am reading The Very Hungry Caterpillar by Eric Carle.
Visit jmcss.org to hear the rest of the book and to discover ways students, individuals, and families can increase literacy across the community. Welcome back to For the District, the podcast for Jackson-Madison County Schools. This morning, we're visiting with Bob Sparks. He's currently an English teacher at JCM Early College High, and he's the former West Tennessee Teacher of the Year, and also school board member Andre Darnell. And a little later, he'll recap his experience at the Student Congress on Policies in Education. So before we get to what students at Liberty High School learned during their time in Nashville, I do want to ask Bob, as a former Teacher of the Year and being connected with the Teacher Advisory Council, you get to spend time in Nashville. What were some of the themes or conversations that you thought were important or maybe of interest to many of your peers?
Yeah, so in the few times I've been to Nashville recently, both with the state board and meeting with legislators, I think one of the big items on the agenda is the third grade retention law. And now, as it's being referred to often, the fourth grade retention law, because now it's affecting fourth graders.
And before we go too far, for folks who don't have third graders or don't work in education, kind of explain to them what that retention law entails.
Yeah, so the gist of it is this, and I'm not an elementary school teacher, but I have colleagues that have kind of shared with me. But essentially, if students don't meet certain benchmarks in reading by third grade, they can be retained and have to repeat third grade. And there are some pathways for them to move forward to fourth grade, but then if they don't meet that benchmark in fourth grade, then they can be retained fourth grade.
But they're essentially being held back for a score on one test. In one subject.
Yeah, essentially that's where it stems from. And so the issue is right now there are no pathways forward for those fourth graders if they don't meet that benchmark. So my understanding is a bill has been finally filed to address that. But I think part of the bigger issue here is what oftentimes happens in education is you have a bill filed that has a lot of unintended consequences, and then they've got to go back and fix it and adjust it. And that's always going to happen to some degree. But I think if teachers had been more part of that conversation before that bill came to discussion, maybe some of these problems that we're now seeing and the headaches and the anxiety that has been caused for families and children could have been lessened or avoided.
Board Member Darnell, what are some of the conversations that you think may be important or have been in interest to you over the last couple of months?
Actually, when we went to our school board conference, you had actually, the majority of the school board districts throughout the state that were opposing the same law that came through the school, third grade retention, as well as the Tennessee School Board Association was opposed to it. So you had a lot of school board. We wanted to make sure that they was starting the process earlier, in pre-K, first grade, second grade, and that they go back and change those laws. Making sure that our voices were being heard, that the community came out, that the board, our school board actually wrote a resolution, and there were several board members, districts that submitted a resolution.
Throughout the state.
Just to ensure that we were heard and that the community were heard. That's what I think was the biggest push that we were pushing for as a district, and making sure that change was not immediately rolled out to the community.
So when folks in the community hear about a third grade retention law or something that they don't agree with, is that first step to reach out to their local school board member? And what's that process like?
Right, yeah.
Do you have people knocking on your door at the house?
Well, you have more of the phone calls, more of the emails, just
and
a lot
this is
of
the right process.
Yes, that's the correct process. Usually, as board members, we try not to just respond immediately. We make sure that we all on the same accord and that the right information is being assimilated to that person. So we usually allow our chairman to respond back to that individual and let them know, the constituents, that, hey, the chairman will respond, we hear your concerns, and we're going to address it this way.
Let me ask you this, Board Member Darnell. What is it like, that dynamic? Because 6 years ago, you were on the other side of that. So what's it like now being someone who gets asked the questions, or people come to you now for, hey, we need information on this, or we need help on this? What's it like to be on that side of the table now, where you're in leadership?
It's exciting. For 3-4 years, I was constantly attending board meetings to understand, how the board functioned, and you would kind of see how things go, and you would approach things from a citizen standpoint. But now being an elected official and attending the school board, the Tennessee School Board Association trainings, and understanding our responsibility, you know how to maneuver throughout the district. So when customers, or not customers, well, they are our customers.
They are, yeah.
Residents, constituents. And when everyone come and have
And
concerns.
when you think about it, they're our bosses.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They determine the seat. It's
Yeah.
not my seat; it's their seat. But when they have these concerns, now I can go and dig in. Hey, let me find this out for you. Let me respond back to you real shortly once I know. So it's rewarding, and majority of the times I have that feeling of gratitude that I've helped someone.
We're visiting with school board member Andre Darnell and Bob Sparks, former West Tennessee Teacher of the Year. He's currently an English teacher at JCM Early College High, and he's been connected to the Tennessee Department of Education's Teacher Advisory Council. So, Mr. Sparks, you talked about third grade retention being, I guess, a hot topic.
Yep.
Also, something we kind of talked about off camera, and I know it's on your list, the voucher conversation. Is that something that came up during the Teacher Advisory Council, and what were those conversations like?
Yeah, just in my different meetings in Nashville with them and with some of the other groups I've gone with, that's definitely a point of conversation right now. Everybody's talking about it in Nashville. When the day I was there to meet with legislators, there was dozens of groups there about just precisely that issue. Because there's obviously just a lot of strong feelings around that right now.
Now, for folks who haven't been following the conversation and don't know necessarily what the voucher topic is about, it's essentially families being able to take public dollars to spend it outside of the public school, at an independent school or a private school. When you talk about pros and cons, what kind of things were brought up at the Tennessee Department of Education Teacher Advisory Council?
So I think one of the things that came up in this conversation a lot is just around assessment. As a public school system, we have standards we teach to. We have certain assessments that we are required to give every year. Funding and lots of things are tied to those things. But then with the way, at least the House version of the voucher bill is written, there's really not a lot of strings attached to that money at all once it goes to the private schools that receive those voucher dollars. And so a lot of the conversation has been around those concerns of like, well, there's one set of standards that public schools have to make, but then you're not going to have those standards for that. Now, I will say the Senate version of that bill does include some testing, and that's part of where the contention is. There's different versions of this bill. In fact, in the House bill, it's 39 pages, but only 5 pages are vouchers. The other, 34 pages it's a whole litany of things, some of which are positive things that I think a lot of education advocates have asked for years, but they're only part of the conversation now when they need to pass the voucher bill. I think that's just an interesting way they've kind of decided to put it together.
Can you make the connection, and again, someone like yourself, you're a teacher. And I know a lot of times you take your work home with you to finish up and get the job done. Well, you have a lot of employees that say, hey, I'm doing my job. I don't have time to worry about what's happening in Nashville or even at the school board. What would be your response to that or your advice to them?
I think what I would want to say is, you may feel that way, or you may feel, politics is just not my thing, or it's toxic, or whatever. But the reality is that the decisions that are made in Nashville by the legislature, by the State Board of Education, they affect your students, they affect your school, they affect your profession, and you need to have a voice in that. I think a lot of the bill, I think there's been quite a few bills in the past few years that really, if you kind of look at them all, they really are eroding, local control, teacher autonomy. Again, the third grade retention bill, that's just a flat bill. Like, if they don't make this, there's no discretion on the part of the school or the teacher, even or the family. This is the outcome.
And when you mention local control, my mind goes back to the charter school issue. At one time, local school boards and local school board members who are elected by the community were able to determine whether or not a community or their community received a charter school or allowed a charter school to move in. Our local school system made a ruling, but the state charter school commission overturned that ruling. Mr. Sparks talks about the lack of local control or local control being taken away. Have you seen that, experienced that, and kind of what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, as a board, we were totally against the move that was done by the Tennessee Charter Commission. We just felt that it was a overreach by the state. One thing that I've brought to the board is that the fact that school board members being elected to our seats, right. I didn't have any calls from my constituents or people in the community asking, hey, we want this charter school in our community. And even one of the bullets in the application actually stated that they wanted this school in my community, my district.
Okay.
And that was shocking for me. And there were people that were standing up, addressing their desire for the school, but no individuals from my district. So I think it's just an overreach when you bring anything like that that's not pushed by the community and it's not locally ran.
So just as you invited residents and community members to contact you all on the board for local decisions and issues, then I guess what residents need to do is contact state officials. Yeah. If those decisions are being made to the state level.
That's correct. You need to reach out to your state representative. You reach out to your local representatives. Just the collective group of individuals responding to their representatives will make your voice be heard.
But Board Member Darnell and Mr. Sparks, I can hear someone say, well, that's just a waste of time. It's not going to work. What is your response, Mr. Bob, to something like that?
Well, I would say, first of all, I've gotten some opportunities through these different organizations I've been a part of, but I don't necessarily need to be a part of those organizations to speak out.
Okay.
And the opportunities I've had to engage, I'm always speaking for myself, not necessarily for these organizations, because I'm a teacher. I've taught now for 15 years. I've seen a lot of things, had a lot of experience in the classroom, and when I go to meet with these legislators, I'm sharing that perspective. I'm sharing that experience. And I think every teacher has that. You have those students in mind that you want to tell people about, or the needs that you see that you want to share. Or parents, if you see things that you're concerned about. As we mentioned earlier, like the constituents, they're the ones that ultimately, they vote officials into office to make these decisions on their behalf and to represent them. And they need to hear from their constituents. And in my experience, they want to hear from us. They want to hear from teachers. I have never had a bad experience talking to a legislator. We've had disagreements. We've had lively back and forth at times, but it's never been a bad experience. And if anything, they're always glad that you're there, especially if you approach it, in a positive way, and you want to share your concerns, share your perspective, and you want to be collaborative.
Board Member Darnell, what would be your response for people that say, it's a waste of time, it's not going to work?
That's the process. I mean, like I said, when I attended all the board meetings to understand how the board worked, I understand that it was about reaching out, showing your concerns. So every citizen has to reach out to their representative. You must email them. Excuse me. You must call them. That's the way that we know how the public is feeling about a certain policy or agenda.
What's interesting, Board Member Darnell recently participated in the Student Congress on Policies in Education, and there were students in the Jackson-Madison County school system who kind of got to go behind the scenes to see how policy works and governance works. So after we get back from this timeout, which I'm being told I'm a little behind on my time, we got to get to this commercial break. When we get back, we'll hear about this experience. There was a trio of students from Liberty Technology High School. They participated in SCOPE, Student Congress on Policies in Education. Mr. Darnell was a group leader at this event, and he'll give us information on that. And also, we're going to tell you about the STAR Teacher Grant. Particularly here in Jackson-Madison County, there is an era of good feelings among our leadership, whether it's the city or the county. The Madison County Commission giving out the STAR Teacher Grant. Chairman Mike Taylor visited the school board recently to help celebrate some teachers. We're going to tell you about that grant when we return from this timeout. You're listening to For the District. It's the podcast for Jackson-Madison County Schools on JJ 97.7 FM. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Jackson Madison County Schools and Forever Communications want you to leap up for literacy. Community partners like Lieutenant Rochelle Staten are increasing literacy across the community by reading 20 minutes every day.
I called, Mr. Pig, are you in? Get out of here, wolf.
Visit jmcss.org to hear the rest of the book and to discover ways students, individuals, and families can increase literacy across the community. Welcome back to For the District, the podcast for Jackson Madison County Schools. I'm Greg Hammond, Chief of Public Information, and today I am joined by Bob Sparks, former West Tennessee Teacher of the Year. He is currently a teacher at JCM Early College High, and he's participating in the Tennessee Department of Education's Teacher Advisory Council, and board member Andre Darnell. You may remember he's been involved in the I Am JCM coalition, which, board member Darnell, I got to give you kudos, man. The I Am JCM coalition, giving away scholarships.
Yes.
You all are literally putting your money where your mouth is.
That's right.
You say you care about students, and then you provide this incentive for them to go the extra mile. You are to be commended.
Thank you.
I think of Kara that works at JCM.
Yes, Kara Reeves.
Kara Reeves, the impactful work she is doing there. And she wears several hats.
Yes, she does.
At JCM. And so thinking about the I Am JCM coalition, it's really cool.
Thank you.
Board member Darnell, you were in Nashville recently as a trio of students from Liberty Technology High School participated in SCOPE.
Yes.
SCOPE is an acronym, and this is what it means: Student Congress on Policies and Education. Essentially, high school students went to Nashville to learn what it's like to be a school board member.
That's right.
Tell us about that.
Yes. SCOPE, this was actually the 41st year of having SCOPE. So this is actually sponsored by the Tennessee School Board Association, and it's designed to have students, give students a voice in public education concerns. They're involved in actually solving some of those problems that we had. So we had some great debate discussions. The students, all the attendees, they basically participated as school board members, school officials, concerned citizens, parents. We brought them all in. They had a general opening session. They would come into the group. They would have their icebreaker. And then they would select who would sit on the board. And they would also go through the process of selecting a superintendent. So we reviewed the questions, the criteria of a superintendent. They would select the superintendent. They had two candidates.
And these are students going
These are
through
students.
this role.
Yeah, they're going through the whole process. We had a role where they had their 2 minutes, set the timer. We had a recorder. They would actually come up and speak their concerns. During the mock school board session, they actually was debating a policy to delay school hours back 2 hours.
Steve Beverly would be interested in that. He's a local media personality who's talked about that.
Yeah. So it was, and it actually failed.
Okay.
For the board. So they go through that process, and then they break for lunch. Then they come back and they select a speaker that's going to actually be in the debate. I was over the group that handled the pros. They will have 3 to 4 different topics. The topics that we was actually should every school district have internship as a part of graduation. So they would work with each other with their debate questions. No, you need to say this. No, you need to say. So it's great just to bring the students involved and understand what all goes through a daily, monthly activity for a school board.
And if you were able to view the Superintendent's Chronicle this past week, the headline was Liberty Tech participates in TSBA Student Congress. So Liberty Technology High School students, Sydney Cole, Aziza Schwam, and Berkeley Roberts participated in the Tennessee School Boards Association Student Congress on Policies in Education. And that was held at Belmont University. So board member Darnell served as a group leader, and really you got to interact with students all across the state.
Yes, it was amazing.
Board member Harvey Walden was also there.
That's correct.
So we want to thank them. Lakita Darnell and Shamel Moore also helping a chaperone there. As you think back on that experience, what do you hope was impactful for not only Jackson-Madison County students who participated, but those students statewide that participated in Scope? What do you hope they take away from that?
Just understanding the full entail of the daily school business, and that it sparked their interest and maybe possibly want to be involved into as a school board member, or to form an organization, and understanding how to get policies pushed in your district.
And when I saw this picture, and again, if you get the Superintendent's Chronicle, you've seen this. If you don't get the Superintendent's Chronicle, just go to jmcss.org and look through our news items. When I saw this picture, many of these students look familiar because they're active on campus.
That's correct.
Sydney Cole's an athlete there at Liberty. Aziza Swam is a high-ranking student in JROTC.
Yes.
And so, and Berkeley Roberts also participating in several events there at Liberty Tech.
That's correct.
So that was very
Aziza
cool to see.
Strom and Berkeley Roberts, they was also the past Miss Liberty contestants.
Really?
As well. Winners.
That is awesome.
Yes.
That is awesome. Bob Sparks, in your role as a teacher at JCM Early College High, I know you all are focused on this accelerated academic opportunities for students. But as we look back and we talk about these students and the fact that they're participating in JROTC, they're participating in pageant competitions, they're participating in athletics and cheer, they're doing these extracurricular activities. As a teacher, what do you see the value for students to participate in activities outside the classroom?
That's a great question, Greg. I think a big part of that is just it helps them be a more well-rounded individual. I think one of the things I've learned in my life is just, taking the opportunities that come to you, the being able to meet more people, stretch yourself, challenge yourself to grow in new ways. There's a lot of important things that we do in the classroom at school, but that is not everything they need to know to be successful in life. So I think just being able to go out there and take advantage of these kind of opportunities is really going to help them be more well-rounded and really going to ready them to succeed beyond the classroom in college and career.
We do want to say before we get out of here, we want to thank the Madison County Commission for sponsoring the STAR Teacher Grant. Mike Taylor, chairman of the Madison County Commission, attended a recent board meeting, and he continues to show a deep commitment to education in his first year as chair there on the Madison County Commission. Chairman Taylor and his colleagues are supporting teachers' academic resources, hence the acronym STAR. The total allocation for this grant program is an impressive $50,000. So I'm looking back at the list, and there appears to be 28 or 29 teachers who received a $1,000 grant supporting exciting student-focused activities. And so if you go to jmcss.org, you can see the complete list of teachers who won this grant. You can also see a quick statement about what projects they're going to spend their 1,000 grants on. So as I look through here, so for example, Jackson Academic STEAM Academy, some of their teachers are spending it on additional robots for students in STEM, a visit to the Civil Rights Museum, or for the Green Power Racing. Bob Sparks, you were able to earn a grant for your students. Talk about the Literary and Visual Arts Magazine project.
Yeah, so at Early College High, this year we're publishing in-house our first ever edition of what we're calling the Cougar Chapbook. It's a collection of just student writing, poetry, stories, some visual art. But with the grant money next year, we're going to be able to get that professionally published. So our second edition, we're hoping to get kind of level up a little bit. So
have that nice professional look, a keepsake for the students and their parents. I'm looking through many of the schools. I see Community Montessori on here, Pope, Andrew Jackson. So you have some fine arts teachers. So thinking about purchasing additional music equipment like a xylophone. Over at Southside High School, they're getting 3D pens. Just a laundry list of exciting student-focused activities. There will be a trip to a science center field trip on here, a field trip to Lone Art Farm. So whether it's in science, technology, English, math. We want to thank our teachers for taking the time to apply for these grants. And Board Member Darnell, I know we certainly want to thank Chairman Taylor and the Madison County Commission for going above the call of duty to make sure that they let the people know they support public education.
Yes, that's wonderful.
You have been listening to For the District. It is the podcast for Jackson Madison County Schools. Again, we want to thank Bob Sparks, an English teacher at JCM Early College High, and he's involved in the Tennessee Department of Education Teacher Advisory Council. So thank you for sharing that experience with us. And Andre Darnell, a board member with Jackson Madison County Schools, also active, a leader in the I Am JCM Coalition. So this is what I would suggest. If you're a graduate at a different high school, you need to contact Board Member Darnell, look at the structure they have for the I Am JCM Coalition, and you need to get a coalition for your own alma mater. And remember, the I Am JCM Coalition, so impressive, they're sponsoring scholarships for their students. So again, you guys are literally putting money where your mouth is and giving these students an extra incentive to go above and beyond. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Again, this is For the District, the JMCSS podcast. We want to thank our friends at Forever Communications for producing this show. You can listen to this episode and other episodes on Apple iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you check out your favorite podcast. We hope you have a great Sunday, an excellent week, and we'll see you next time.